Hi, today we're doing something special. We are on TikTok Live having this conversation because it's one that has been sort of prominent in terms of like people asking to talk about it. So if you're new here, welcome to Conversations in the Living Room. This is the, I don't want to use the word one-stop shop where we talk about love, relationships, pleasures, and I think today's different.
Pleasures, the way that rolled off your tongue.
Today's different because we're going to talk about trials too. Yes, and my name is T, short for Terrison, and you are?
I am Drew, and yes, we're doing things a little bit differently today. We're going to be talking about conflict, something that I think folks don't really want to have conversations about. It's something that people tend to want to shy away from, but it's clearly something that our community is super interested in. So we're going to be talking about conflict today.
Yes, and I think let's start from the beginning. What are some of the triggers? Actually, let's take it back from the step. What are some of the triggers I give that creates conflict in this relationship? What are the little buttons I push?
What
Would you say?
So I would say for me, definitely one, the fact that you are a morning person and I'm not is definitely a point of tension. Like, Tosin wakes up with so much energy. Like in the morning, he wakes up and he's ready to go. Whereas me, I need to thaw. Like I am ready to go by like 10 a.m. No matter what time I wake up, it's usually about 10 a.m. when I'm like fully switched on. Sometimes 10:30. So he wakes up with so much vim, ready to go. And he tries to like get me on that same wavelength. And I'm like, I'm never gonna get there. It's just not gonna happen. So that is definitely a point of tension for us. And then I would say the second thing is we both are quite stubborn, but I would say in different ways. I think we both tend to think that our way of doing things is the right way. But Tosin is someone who's you have a lot of common sense. So Tosin will like always approach things from a very logical, common sense way. Whereas me, I know what the end goal is, and I kind of like, however I get there is like however I get there, and it's just like whatever. So I think sometimes he'll try and impose his way of like doing things onto me.
Yeah.
And I'm a Virgo. Like I think my way is the right way. So for me, it comes across as being micromanaged, and then I instantly want to rebel. So that's definitely a point of tension for us.
It's interesting you say that because I think a few days ago when we were talking and we were talking about mentorship, I think something you said has now allowed me to give you the reins. Because even if you look at the last few days in terms of you editing and doing things by yourself, it's like you told me that a real good mentor that wants to bring the best out of someone allows the mentee to fail, allows them to try things themselves, ask the right question that probes them the right way to sort of get things done, but not necessarily doing it for them. It's interesting you say the morning person, because on the flip side, one of the things that annoys me the most about you is the fact that you can be a late person in terms of you can be sluggish. Now, in the morning, I believe like, let us plan the day so that the day can go accordingly, especially the fact that we're both creative. I don't necessarily understand the idea of waking up at like 10 a.m. and then it's not like, okay, I'm awake, but I still need 2 hours to like melt and wake up. Before we didn't talk about what happens for the day. It's like, I've been awake since 7 a.m. So I'm gonna use 5 hours of my day waiting on you. So I think that is one that gives me a big like, conflict.
So do you feel like when you wake up early and I'm still asleep and then I need time to thaw off, do you feel like in the morning a bit of resentment builds up because of that?
Yes!
Because sometimes I'll wake up and I'm like, why are you mad at me already? Like, I'm just still trying to understand what left and right is. I'm just disheveled. My week is just... And then I'm just like, why he got mad at you already?
Yes. And I think it's because when you wake up sometimes you cannot be understanding of the fact that I've been awake for 5 hours. So you wake up and then you're like, okay, I still need like 2 more hours to really wake up. And I'm just like, bruh. Like 6 hours of the day has gone already. Can we get on with it?
Of your day. Mine has only been 6 minutes.
But then you also don't want to go bed too late. So it's like you want to condense a lot within
I just need my 8 hours. As long as I have my 8, 9 hours.
Defensive here, because when you were when you were making your list, I don't feel like I was defending myself. Like I let you speak. Like communication is something else we also like deal with in terms of conflict in our relationship.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the second one is, I need to take a moment for this one. Andrew does not know how to find anything. He can literally take a book from the shelf right now and says that, oh, guests are coming, I have to tidy up the house. He'll take that book and then put it away. Let's say the guests stay here for like 2 hours And by the time the guests leave, I'm like, babe, can you bring the book back to the shelf? Andrew does not know where he's put that book.
I got that from my dad, that's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, it's a bad habit.
It's extremely.
But you know how I get around it? So at the moment, I have like a system in place where all of my belongings are in the same, I always put them back in the same place every single day. So as soon as I'm done with them, I put them in the exact same spot every day because I know I can't find shit. So basically, that's my system. And as soon as something is moved from that spot, it like just deregulates me.
Okay, like the way you knew where you put your ring today. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. So the next question,
Yeah.
let's talk about what is our default approach to conflict and why.
Okay. So I think I'll look at this from the lens of the past. What was my approach to conflict? So my approach to conflict, I think we talked about this. It got to a stage in our relationship where we had to sit to understand each other. We talked about the reason why we deal with conflict or manage conflict the way we do.
And I feel like a lot of that work happened in lockdown, because I remember a specific conversation that happened in lockdown when we lived together for the first time. Yeah. I remember a specific conversation. I literally remember exactly where I was. You were seated on the sofa, and it was the conversation where I told you why I shut down when we're having an argument, and you are getting louder because like that is your default to just be loud. And I told you why I shut down during that instance, and then that was actually a moment of me understanding for myself why I shut down when we have an argument as well. Which was, I remember, I think the first revelation that I had where, as it related to me understanding my conflict style and where it came from, and how it showed up in our relationship. But yeah.
And the interesting thing is, before we had that conversation, I never found any fault in the way I handled conflict. Because in my head, it was like, it was innate. That's how it was. And I think when we both spoke to each other was when we finally realized that, oh yeah, no, this is bad from both ends. So in terms of the way I handled conflict in the past, I grew up in a Nigerian household where the motto was, whoever shouted the loudest was right. And then bringing that into a relationship was, I would use the word toxic because I would want to get information across to him, and rather than me trying to understand how we would receive the information, in my head it's like, keep shouting, because then one day he's gonna like absorb it and understand your frustration. So that was the first one. The second one was silent treatment. Like growing up, when I had arguments with my siblings, we would go silent treatment. I think I've even gone 2 months without saying one word to my brother. I've gone 2 weeks living in the same household without saying a word to my mom because we had like issues. So in the relationship, you also had that with you.
Yeah, silent treatment was a bit. I actually didn't notice it much with you.
No, the reason why I never did that with you or displayed that with you is because you were better at it than I was. So it was affecting me. So in terms of you being silent towards me was affecting me more than if I was trying to be silent towards you, because I just wanted to make sure you were okay. You were annoying me in that moment. Like I was very annoyed at you, but I just wanted you to voice that you were okay. And then you being silent really was just like, it was choking me like really bad. So I was very open, like just come and talk to me anytime, like I'm ready. So yeah, so I think being loud was like the main way I would communicate in the past. And then also the silent treatment. That worked nice very well to you.
So for me, definitely my default was the silent treatment for sure. Like I grew up in a household, so I'm Ugandan, and I don't know how much of this plays a factor into how I look at conflict, but I grew up in a household where my family were very conflict avoidant. So even though there was like physical and verbal abuse in my family growing up, we were still very conflict avoidant in the sense that we didn't address the conflict in a healthy way, and we never repaired from the conflict in a healthy way. We just kind of would sweep it under the rug and act as if nothing happened when there was a big bust up, and a lot of feelings were buried deep inside as a kind of emotional way of coping, I guess. We never really expressed how we felt. So that was my experience growing up. Never really seeing what it was like to see a conflict and to move through a conflict and to repair from a conflict and reflect on a conflict. So I internalized a lot of that, and that was a lot of my approach to conflict within my relationship at the beginning, and it was something I wasn't really aware of. I didn't really understand that I was completely shutting down. Like, I'd find myself in a state of disagreement with you and I couldn't actually bring myself to speak. Like, I would literally emotionally, physically, energetically just close off. And I didn't realize the damage that was causing. I was doing it to protect myself, but didn't realize that was having a hugely damaging effect on you, until I think I listened to a podcast by a lady called The Something Fairy, I can't remember, and she was talking about the concept of shutting down, where it comes from, how it's a response from like childhood trauma, and then what impact it has on other people as well as on yourself. And that's when I was like, wow, like all of the symptoms were like ding, 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 like tick, 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 like this is exactly what I was feeling and doing. And then by becoming aware of that, I started to realize, and you calling me out as well about it to express myself, I started to realize that I needed to communicate in order to deal with conflict better, in order to be more transparent around how I was feeling. Because sometimes you weren't even the issue. The issue was something that I was battling with myself, but I'd close myself off. And then that would make you feel at fault when that wasn't the case. So that definitely inspired a lot of inner work that I had to do on myself in order to improve my conflict style. Not conflict style, but in order to resolve conflict better.
And that was a very trying time in our relationship, because it's like two completely different ways of communicating and everything. And it's like, the more I was loud, the more you were shutting down. And the more you shut down, the more I would get loud. So it's...
But I remember thinking it was quite a beautiful thing at one point, because I remember being around your family, and I remember how you guys would just be loud and just be like when I lived with
my sisters-in-law,
and you guys were just loud, like you'd be downstairs just like loud arguing, but then you'd be like completely fine afterwards, like as if
it's resolved.
Yeah, it was resolved. Like it was like
there'll be underlining like issues like there that we've not resolved, but the main thing has been resolved.
And I was fascinated by that, because for me, if things got that loud in the rare instance like they did, it mean we fight, like literally we'd have a fight and it would not be resolved for years. And then the difference was, I'm sure when you would sense it when you were around my family, it would be very passive aggressive. Like you would know about things that were going on and you would see the way like we would interact and you would sense it, but it was never addressed. So I remember being very much aware of the differences in how our family approached conflict, and thinking that, if we could harness this, we could find a really good like medium, but just not really knowing how to do that. But I think we're definitely on that journey now.
Yeah, and I think it's a good segue to even talk about, so in terms of now since we've been married, how do we handle conflict different to that experience? And I think that the first thing for me is our communication has been a lot better, in the sense that we do not let things brew. Like if something is significantly like affecting us in any way, we talk about it. Now, I'm not saying that it's smooth sailing, like, oh my God, sometimes timing, like a big issue that I feel like now that you have and how we manage conflict is my timing can be off, in the sense that something has happened, rather than me giving you space to sort of work through it, straight away I'm on your neck like...
Yeah, and I'm just like...
I'm still processing that.
But also on the flip side of that, sometimes I take so long to process something that's happened and I don't actually circle back to you and close the loop. God, why did that sound so corporate?
No, but you don't though. Sometimes...
I need time and then we'll never come back to it.
And I'm there like, I'll be waiting. And it will raise his head up again in a different way. And then I'm like, okay, but now I'll have to sit him down like, babe, do you see like this is becoming a pattern? Can you take the time to figure out what the issue here is? Because it's definitely not this. What is the issue? Figure it out and let us sit down and talk about it.
You know what's wild? Sometimes when you approach me like that and be like, hey, what's the issue? How do we resolve it? How do we move forward? I would literally be triggered and be like, why is he bringing it up? But it's actually a very constructive thing to do, to like try and resolve and think about how do we stop this from happening again. But I'd be triggered like, why is he bringing this up again? Like, I just need space and silence. Like, wow, conflict styles are so interesting.
And I think the second one for me would be the fact that we have taken time to understand how the person receives information. Like, this is a huge thing. Repeating the same thing in different ways can have a complete different impact. In the sense that I might be mad at him and I'm like, yo, you're pissing me off. And he's just gonna shut down. I'm like, okay, well done, you shouted at me. Whereas it's like, hey babe, you're kind of annoying at the moment, I kind of need space, that would have a different, it's not gonna like it. Like how your partner receives information, it was so eye-opening. I think you're right. When we had that conversation in lockdown, I don't shout anymore. There are moments where you really do push me to that corner and you lock me in that I just like, but I think that's a very big rarity now. Like I what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely not. You definitely have a more varied arsenal of like tools that you have to communicate. You've
Therapy.
got shouting over here, you've got conversing, asking questions over here, you've got speaking softly over here. And then I don't shut down as much anymore, I would say.
Yeah.
Before it was like, but it's still something I need to work on for sure. It still happens.
Oh.
Don't you notice it? I still shut down, but I'm just getting a lot better.
Okay. I think maybe because it doesn't last as long now.
It doesn't last as long. Before you used to,
Like before you would see Andrew's, it's like literally, how do I put it? I don't know if it's like
my eyes would
movies.
glaze over.
You know when somebody's eyes glaze over like they've been possessed and there's nothing left in there,
Yeah.
and it's just like you're talking to a wall. Andrew's eyes would just go, and I'm just like,
And that was actually one of the symptoms. Let me link that podcast into these show notes. because-
Teenage Fairy?
No, it said like you look like your eyes are just gone, like you're just not there.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And they even said one of the symptoms is you try and act as if you're emotionally there when you're actually not. So in the moment you'll try and pretend that like you're emotionally available, but then it's almost like a robot trying to. And that's what I would do. I remember trying to be like, how am I emotionally supposed to respond in this situation?
So that I can get out of this conversation.
Yeah, versus how am I actually feeling and how should I actually respond? Which is wild.
So now, since we've been married, what are the ways you feel like the way we navigate conflict has changed?
So I think for marriage comes with a lot of weight and it's like a commitment, right? So like a legal, emotional commitment to someone. Like I can't really like ghost toast it now that we're married, right? Before,
Hey, babe.
yeah. Before it was like if I'm pissed with him, silent treatment, I could just leave the situation, go back to my house and just like just cut off communication. But now that I can't do that, and there's a much more of a responsibility to resolve the conflict now. Like there's a lot more at stake, and I think that means you have to do a lot more work on yourself to be better at resolving conflict, work that you wouldn't have had to do before because there wasn't the responsibility of the commitment you have to someone. So I think that's how it's changed.
Yeah.
I think it's higher stakes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think having
Therapy's helped a lot. Yeah.
a lot. I think therapy I had before marriage helped a lot in terms of unlearning a lot of things we've done. And I think your partner having therapy in a way can also help you. Because you having therapy, you always bring conversations to me like, okay, this is what I learned today. This is how I feel like it's affecting our relationship. Let's talk about it. And it's a blessing. I know it's a privilege to have therapy. It's not something everybody can afford. But if you can, as a man, as a woman, however you identify, I think therapy, if you can afford it, do it. Because there's a lot of things that that can be worked on, that can be unlearned. Because believe me, conflict was like the way we navigated conflict then and how we navigate conflict now, complete 180. Like we would have fiery, like it was never violent. We're never violent to each other, but you would have arguments where it felt like, is this the person?
Break up.
Yeah, like, I don't want to be with this person. But now when we argue, it's like, you annoy me, but I'm already here. There's a future.
Yeah.
This is
have to work through it.
Yeah.
But do you remember when when we first started going through therapy and I felt like you were over therapized?
Yeah.
And I feel like there is such a thing as being over therapized. I don't know if that's a word, but it's essentially when you start to bring a lot of therapy speak and terms into your everyday conversation. And for me, it also looks like not giving your partner grace. So as soon as you become, Tosin was doing this. At one point, I literally broke down because like Tosin was not giving me grace for anything. Therapy was helping him to see like some of my more unhelpful or toxic traits, right? And then instead of like, I think there's a certain level of grace that needs to be given to your partner when you recognizing that they're human, that they're not always going to be completely perfect. I also think there's a level of accountability that also needs to be held, but it's getting the balance between accountability and grace that is the key.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when you first go through therapy, you can drift so much to the side of accountability and not delivering any grace to your partner that it can actually be damaging to the relationship. And I think there was a point where I literally broke down. I was like, you were literally holding me accountable in a way that I felt wasn't giving me any grace at all, like no wiggle room. It was like, you have to be on your P's and Q's all the time.
True.
What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. Because I felt like I was in a place where therapy was helping me sort of understand a lot of the things I was navigating in the relationship. And I was coming to that place of, what do you call it, awareness. And rather than me talk to him to become aware, I was talking to him like, yo, fix this shit. And to him, it's like, first of all, you're just telling me this is an issue. You've given me like 24 hours notice, and it's like, you expect me to change like this. And I feel like therapy made me aware, and I was like, I am doing the work to change, and you're not doing the work. It's like, yeah, because you're talking to somebody that's helping you out. I'm trying to navigate this on my own. So I do think that, yes, when I had therapy in the early stage, I was coming over to you and like,
He was dragging me.
like, so do you want to tell me why you're like treating me this way in the relationship? It's like, wait, was I doing that?
I wasn't even aware. Yeah, like it was like awareness straight to accountability. It was like, no, actually, it was accountability and it was skipping the awareness. Like, I think when you're experiencing behavior that's not helpful from your partner, you need to make them aware of it first, then you drive the accountability. If you skip straight to accountability, it can be just a shock to the partner.
Yes. And I think for that awareness piece, understand that there's a way to make your partner aware without becoming nagging. Now, finding that balance is very difficult because it's something that bothers you, and I'm a believer that if something bothers you, repeat it until when the person absorbs it and change. Because if it's something that, how do I put it, there's some things that are temporary, where it's like, I definitely know you're only having these behaviors that is causing conflict because it's a temporary thing, that I can ignore. But when it's something that raises his head up once every month, once every 2 months, once every 3 months, it's like, yo, let's talk about it, understand what the root of the issue is. And if it's something that we have to sort of navigate a different way, where, like, for example, on the Saturdays when I wake up and I'm like, this is what we have to do, this is, and you told me that, yo, that doesn't work for me. When I wake up on a Saturday, I need to figure out, okay, first of all, am I awake? Secondly, let us talk about the things we have to do. Don't just back orders at me, like there's a list of things we have to do.
Yeah.
And I think we had this conversation like 2-3 months ago, and I've reeled it all the way back in.
Yeah, you've gone a lot better there.
Thank you. So yeah, I think that is one thing I would say, that understanding how to sort of raise the awareness is key. And one thing that I also want to add is, I spoke to one of our close friends, Faye, and she told me that marriage is not for a month or two. Marriage is for years to come. It's not every battle that has to be the ultimate battle. Some things ignore, some things move on. Don't hold on to every fight as it's the make or break of your relationship, because some things are really just little annoying, niggling things that you can't just move on from. And I'm trying to learn that. I'm not saying I'm best at it.
Yeah, you should let me get away with more things. I'm only joking. That's what I took away from it. Can you imagine?
Because Andrew's, okay, something I forgot to mention. Andrew's the last born in his family. So I'm the middle child in my family. I know the series.
He's used to not getting shit.
So you know when they say the middle child is not as loved as much, they're overlooked at this and that. And then you meet somebody who is the center of attention, who is loved. And there's a lot of things that took for us to work to where we are today. And
I think the community are clocking it too. Someone commented saying Andrew's a big baby. Yeah, I am. And
what now?
What now?
So yeah, I think that the way our communication has changed, or the way we navigate conflict has changed a lot through marriage. Is number one, understand that marriage is for a lifetime. So not every fight has to be win or lose. And somebody said this thing that I don't think in conflict that there should be a right or wrong. I agree to an extent.
Yeah, actually to an extent.
But there's
situations where there's
fundamentally right and wrong. And I think you call me out on that a lot, because sometimes I do have views that can be perceived as extremely wrong, and you'd be like, yo, this is not one to talk about right or wrong, this is wrong. And then I've learned that way. No, you're good at calling me out. When I call you out, you never listen because you're always right, but it's fine. So,
okay, so should we speak about the next question?
What is the next question?
So, what are the unique ways that being black and gay how do you think that that impacts our conflict, but also our resolution?
Being in a black gay couple, 2 men.
Yeah.
That in itself is like a lot. Ego is one of the biggest things we have had to sort of put down and put aside in our relationship for it to work. And it's comes from a place where, oh God, this is gonna sound so stupid.
No, we need to just be honest about this, because I feel like
where we can both see ourselves as leaders sounds so stupid.
providers.
And then when you now have 2 people in the relationship who see themselves that way, there's competition. It's not outward competition where we're like, yo, I'm doing this, you're doing that, but you can feel the little moments. And one of those things that raises head is when we do content creation. Andrew and I view creativity in completely different lens sometimes, because I view creativity from the sense of like, I don't want to say that I know what our audience wants, but I know what our audience wants to connect to. And I'm very here to be like, let's tap into that, let's do that. And Andrew is like,
I know what I want to convey.
I know what I want to convey. And
that's actually so true, yeah.
And I think that where ego plays a part is, I would think that this is the right way to connect with our audience. And Andrew's like, no, our audience wants to hear the authentic voice from us in terms of like who we are as people, and let's just put that out there. And
whoever connects with it, connects with it. Whoever doesn't, yeah.
And then, we had a lot of argument about that. Also, ego in terms of like just doing things around the house, where it's like, this is the way it should be done. And I'm just like,
I think, do you mean like, for me, it's like, where do we break away from traditional heteronormative roles, and then where do we not embrace them? But I do think it's, as a black gay male couple, there is that, I don't feel it as much anymore, but I feel like definitely in our earlier years, it was like, this is the example of a relationship that I've seen, this heteronormative ideal that society's given me. So let me model after that, whether that be like subconsciously, right? So like, whether that be like, oh, our sexual roles are this, so therefore we should mirror what heteronormative roles and what expectations are of like a man and a woman, for instance, in the relationship. I felt more of that pressure earlier on, even though I would pretend that I didn't. But then I would say now, I genuinely feel like we are way more fluid.
Yes.
In how we express our masculinity and the expectations of our masculinity and the things that we do, and like make sure things that we do don't have like that weight on them as much.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that plays a big role. Like even like who's the breadwinner in our relationship, that's like a classic example. Like
I thought I was gonna marry a man that was gonna look after me and like, you know, just make me feel loved every day financially.
So what's the difference?
Now I have to work for the things I have, and it's like it's a very different future I saw for myself, because now I have to meet you halfway and like work.
Really? Is what you're bringing in halfway? I didn't know that.
Wow. It's bringing something to the table. Shit, I'm out. Is he halfway? No, but in all seriousness, like one of the conversations I had with Africa the day before the wedding, I told her about how I put Andrew on a pedestal. Because Africa was the person, was our officiant for the wedding. And I sat down with how I did for the wedding to polish my vows, because I had the words, I had emotions, but I did not know how to convey it in a way that it landed almost as beautifully as it did. And I said that one of the reasons why I felt this pressure was because I put Andrew on such a pedestal. Like Andrew with words is a weapon when he decides to talk. And I knew that the day of our wedding day, I knew his vows were going to be amazing. And I was speaking to Africa and I was like, I'll put him on a pedestal. Like, he is amazing. He's this, is that. She's like, so are you. Like, you have to understand that do not let the views you have of him be what determines how you should convey your vows. Your vows should come from you. Whichever way you want to put it out there, put it out there. It's not the way you feel like Andrew's going to say his vows. You should feel you want to match up to that. And then when she said that, it kind of made me realize that a lot of ego is at play in our relationship around that time, which it helped work on it a lot because
I think that a little bit of competition, or like, I think a little bit of ego is a good thing.
A little bit of ego, but putting you on a pedestal is a different thing entirely.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Partner, let me upgrade you on my
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Especially when we go out and, you know, like who can get the most numbers in one night and things like that. It's very, very fun. Yeah. So yeah, I think ego was a big thing. What is something else that plays in, I think, traditions in a black gay couple, which you already mentioned in terms of like...
Yeah, that's it. I'm happy
and
with
also
that.
the perception. Perception plays a lot.
Oh, perception that like, I think people think we fight. Like we've gotten some questions, some wild questions on our socials about that.
Yeah.
And that's not the case for us, thankfully.
We've never physically fought.
Yeah.
We had a play fight that led to some pretty amazing...
Wow, makeup.
Yeah. Whew.
Child.
Yeah, but that was never...
That was the closest.
It was a very like...
beat me up, but
It was a very do something moment.
Yeah.
And something was done. So yeah.
But yeah, no, we have not. I don't think I've ever felt like, and I've never felt a pressure to like display that sort of like, what's the word? I think there's something to be said about dominance, like who's the more dominant one, who's the more... I think that definitely plays a part. And I think dominance changes depending on the situation, depending on the era for us. I think earlier on in our relationship, I think I co-signed to an idea of who's dominant and who's passive. But I think as time has gone on, we kind of allow ourselves to be fluid in terms of who is the dominant one, who's the passive one, depending on like what we're doing, the time, like what era we're in. So I definitely think we've been a lot more fluid with that, which is cool.
Because the best way a relationship works, it doesn't matter in terms of your sexuality.
Yeah.
It's allowing I don't want to use the word leadership, but allowing it to be an ebb and flow.
Yeah.
You are not the master at everything. And I think anybody who goes into a relationship, sorry, I'm so sorry, pardon me on this. I hate it when I hear people in heteronormative relationships say that I want to find a man who's a leader, who's a provider, who's a this, who's a that. But I'm like, yo, what about the day he decides he just wants to take a step back? Are you able to be in a position you lead? And I think for me, the beauty of our relationship is that there are days where it's like, yo, I am running on 20% right now. You need to like see if you can carry the 80 to lift us up. And there's some days where it's like, yo, I'm running on 20 and I'm running on 20% too. I don't want this to become a conflict. How can we do this? Let's just watch TV all day. Let's just order food. Let's do nothing and make sure that we're both 100%. Or let's just talk till we get to be at 100%. And I think that that's the beauty of a relationship. If you are really one with your partner, you know when shit is on. You know when things are down. Like, just communicate. Talk.
This is going to be a really long conversation because what you said just unlocked something else for me. And it was the time that we've spoken about this on our live, the time where T and I were like, had a situation in the club whereby I don't even know if I can say this on YouTube, but we were D-worded.
Oh, we're spiked.
We were spiked. Okay, we were spiked. And I remember at that time, I remember thinking, like, coming to the realization that we're spiked and being like, we need to leave. Like, why are we still here? And I remember you had a confession to me afterwards, because we ended up staying. And I think I'll allow you to finish it, like, in terms of how you felt, because you felt as though it was the, like, manly thing to stay, right?
Yeah.
You thought I would look at you some type of way if you were like, we should leave.
Yeah.
And I was like, you saw me when the earthquake went off in Jamaica. I don't mind running. Let's get out of there.
But we've come a long way.
Yeah.
We've come a long way because when it happened, and there has to be some accountability to that.
Mm-hmm.
So Andrew had,
it's
coming. You know it's coming. When we were dating in the beginning, and I think it took some time for me to understand that he was comfortable. Andrew perceived me as this was a toxic masculinity at play. Man, this
alpha,
all of this bullshit.
Yeah.
And then when we were in that situation where we got spiked in the club, I was thinking to myself that, okay, the right thing to do would be to leave to protect him, even when he suggested that. But at least I didn't want to look weak, so that in his eyes, I don't stop looking like the alpha. But now looking back at it, so stupid.
No, I get that. I will take accountability for that. But at that point, that was not the case. This was like...
But I didn't know that you had changed.
Child, this was like... What was it? Like 8 years into our relationship? 9 years into our relationship?
No, it was... No,
it was about 2 years ago, which meant it was about nine years.
Yeah, but I still did not think you had changed.
Well, I had, so...
You didn't make that known to me.
Yeah.
But we talked about it, and then you made it
right. We resolved it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is one piece of advice that you would give to me to handle conflict better?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I know, I thought of it.
Conflict with me or conflict in general?
How would you say one piece of advice to me that you think would help me handle conflict better?
Okay.
Me, like literally me as a person.
I'll give you one piece of advice to help you handle conflict externally and one piece of advice to help handle conflict between you and I.
Yeah.
I think handle conflict between you and I want you to be in a place of proactive communication whereby something has happened, we've agreed that we're going to talk about it. I want you to sit me down and bring it up again and be like, hey, we talked about this. I know I was in the right place at the time when you brought it up, but this is how I basically think the situation went. This is how I believe we should communicate it in future. This is how it worked through it. I think I would love that from you because I'm the kind of person that I want to talk about it and get it resolved there and then. And you don't allow space for that. But then I also don't want to be like, we brushed you over and we've forgotten about it, because honestly, it's never a big argument that destroys relationship. It's the little things that become repeated, like constant. And I want us to be able to get to the bottom of the issue. Would be the advice in terms of proactive communication. Externally, something I think that you've been doing lately anyways, which I'm very proud of you, is the fact that believe that you are the shit, because
say that.
Everybody says that about you and everybody cannot be wrong about you. I know there are moments where there's imposter syndrome, there is this, there is that, or you're in an environment that doesn't allow you to see that you're the shit, but you are the shit. Like, there is nothing I have ever seen you put yourself to that you have never succeeded in. So when you have doubts because somebody puts that doubt in you, it confuses me, because it's like, once you get out of that space and you go into your real life, you literally create magic. So for me, that's why when it comes to you dealing with conflict, it's like, understand the faults you have with that situation, but never think you're the problem, because you're not the problem. 9 out of 10 times, in fact, 9.9 out of 10 times, it is them that is the problem. And I'm not saying that to externally, but in this relationship, in this relationship,
it's
be 50-50.
Just no.
But yeah, that's for me to you. So what would be yours externally, I guess?
Ooh, okay. So I think externally, I feel like you kind of handle your business quite well externally. I think I would say that I feel like you don't put yourself in really compromising positions with people. You always are like very vocal around like your boundaries and like the level of I think you give off an air that people respect you. I would say that I think externally I would say don't always assume bad intention. I think there are times where you assume bad intention when sometimes it's just ignorance, or like someone just isn't aware of. It doesn't mean that their impact isn't still negative, right? They still need to be held accountable if their intentions are bad and the action drives that outcome.
Yes.
But I think sometimes you can assume bad intention very early on, and it's not always the truth in that instance.
Okay.
And that affects how you engage with a situation or person when you assume bad intent from the get-go. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then in this relationship?
In this relationship, I would say...
This is your moment. Lay it on me.
I would say in this relationship... Why can't I think of anything?
Perfection is a disease of a nation. Yeah. I knew there was no flaws. Like, I pretty understood and accepted that from a long time.
I don't know why patience keeps coming up.
Sorry?
The word patience keeps coming up.
Okay. Do you want to talk about it?
Okay, no. I know what it is.
What?
I think for me, it's not, I don't know if it's like a feedback on conflict per se, but I would say that just allowing someone to...
You.
Allowing me to approach things the way I approach things. Allowing me to be me in how I approach things. That sounds very vague.
I understand what you're alluding to, and I think that the only question I have for you on that is, do you allow yourself to believe enough in what you want to do that you don't need to seek validation from me? Because the thing is, it's difficult for me to understand that boundary when validation is sought from my opinion, and it's never.
Yeah.
The thing is that if you
Wait, I actually don't even think we're talking about conflict right now.
No, we are talking about conflict.
Because me seeking validation from you doesn't sound like conflict. It sounds like me, how I navigate doing things more generally.
Okay, but I think that it is something that causes conflict, no? Okay, let's bring it back again. So let's repeat the answer. So your answer is that in order for me to help sort of navigate conflict better in this relationship, you want me to be able to allow you to do things your own way.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense to me.
So what do you mean by do things your own way? Do you feel like there are better ways in terms of we can handle conflict, you have better ideas around it, and I should allow you to be the one who leads that conversation? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, that's a good one. I want to take that one. I think allow me to lead in the resolution more. That's the good one.
Right, okay.
I feel like you tend to lead on the resolution a lot. And I think I need to lead more on the resolution part.
And that circles back to my point to you with proactive communication.
Yeah, exactly. So allow me to, which circles back to why patience kept coming up for me, because it's patience to allow me to resolve.
I'm being gaslit right here because I give you patience, but you do not come back to me.
You don't give me enough time still.
Bruh. The conversations that we've had last year that I know that will never come back up again, but it's fine. It is what it is.
Just wait.
Okay. And we're not in a position to give advice on relationship and things like that. But I think one question to you before we wrap it up would be, what is an advice or what is one thing you would say for people that early stage of their relationships or early stage in dating in helping them navigate conflict? Because the way we handled conflict back in the day is by the grace of God, we are here to be together. It's not that it was violent, it was anything, but it was very toxic is the right word, because it was never resolved. It was just we would argue and never come to understanding, but it's different, completely different now. So what would be an advice you give to people early on, probably in long-term relationships, in terms of how they should look at conflict, in terms of understanding each other?
I think understanding how you approach conflict is really important, and how you approach communication. So I think doing that work to reflect on how you approach those things and why, where it comes from. Like, are there any signals you could look to from your past, from like any particular like conflict that's happened in your life that's left a lasting impact on you? I think you really need to assess and look inward to see how you approach conflict. And I think you need to understand, where is it working against you versus where is it working for you? And you need to understand how that aligns with the partner that you're with, because you need to understand their default conflict style as well, and their default communication style, and understand where is this butting heads, or where is this actually helping us both. And I think particularly if you're Black, if you're queer, if you're in a same-sex relationship, I think you have to allow yourself the freedom to not have to embrace, or to understand where you deviate from heteronormative ideals. Because I think that's really important. You can create the type of relationship that you want. You don't have to copy off of any blueprint.
Yeah.
That can create more conflict for you. I mean, some people embrace it works well for them. So I think, but understanding where you align to it, where you don't, I think is really important, because that leads into dropping your ego. I think understand where your ego is getting in the way of your communication, and understand where your ego is kind of, what's the word? When you're not accountable. Because I think sometimes ego can make you not accountable and not apologize for your wrongs. So I think that's really, really important. So checking your ego at the door, understanding that as Black, queer, same-sex folks who are in relationship with one another, we can model the type of relationship we want, where we deviate, where we align to heteronormative ideals, and just being clear on that. And then understanding your communication and conflict styles. Where is it working for you? Where is it working against you? And then, going from there.
And I think the only thing to add into that is, once you've done that work, be very vocal with your partner in the sense that sit them down. I have done the work. this is how I feel like I receive communication, or how I want to be talked to, and this is how I think I feel comfortable talking to you. It's for them to turn around and be like, that's how you feel you can talk to me, but that's not how I want to receive it. I think, honestly, once you do all that work and you understand how your partner receives information, it is a lifesaver. Because everybody said communication, but communication,
We didn't really know what it meant.
Without understanding how your partner receives and listens to information, it's a waste of time.
It's a two-way street.
Because like I said, I was talking to this one and he was giving me like eyes glazed. Okay, I apologize for this situation. Let us go out and eat now. And then it ignores me for like 48 hours for this. Like, yeah, it was crazy.
And I think the final tip is you're both on the same page. Like, if you find the person that is your person, is really you both against the world. So try not to look at it as you against them. Try and look at it as you're both against the issue and resolve that issue. You're both on the same team.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes our TED Talk for today.
But this was a really good conversation.
Yeah.
I love this.
It was.
Because it allowed us to really trace our steps all the way back, like all the way from like family upbringing, how that affected our relationship, our ways of handling conflict, to how we dealt with it in our relationship, to where we are now as a married couple. Like, I love that. Like, we have come a long way. And I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I'm proud of you too.
My little fight, my little hustle and bustle, my little tussle. Like, I love that. I'm proud of you, baby.
So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. Check out the show notes. There's always some goodies there, some cute links and stuff. Check that all out. And we will see you in the next episode of Conversations in Living Room.
Subscribe, because
y'all ain't subscribing.
Because we're out here getting like what, 25, 30k views, but people are not subscribing. You subscribe before this goes on Patreon.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for joining us.